Ladies and gentlemen, it is so exciting to see this room so full of people, particularly on a rainy night and after so many winter storms, but we do need the rain, we know that. So, what has brought us all here together? I think we know the answer to that. It is the Cypress snowy owl. That bird, since it arrived, has transfixed the city of Cypress, Orange County, Southern California, and way beyond. The interest in this amazing bird is so exciting and so inspiring, and I know we're all looking forward to learning more about this bird this evening. My name is Gail Richards. I am president of CNCH Audubon, and it is one of the largest chapters in the whole network, national network of National Audubon Societies. We have over 3,000 members, and that is one of the reasons that we were able to help with the publicity of this event, because we have a listserv of 4,600 people that we can send out a notice to in a minute. And that helped a little bit, but we got help from a lot of other people. Brendan Ortiz. Brendan, it was over here at the table. Where are you, Brendan? Right there. Brendan made this amazing flyer that we sent out to all the chapters of, or Audubon chapters of Southern California. And it was sent to all of the contacts from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Department. So, and then we also had Roy Roush with his, Roy? His Facebook page on the Cypress snowy owl. And he now has how many contacts, Roy? 2,100 people have developed a passion for this gorgeous bird that came to visit us, at least, right? We do have a distinguished guest with us this evening, and Hertz Malari is the mayor of the city of Cypress. Thank you for joining us. And I think there's a council member here. Yes, also, I was told not to name people, so would you like to tell us your name? That's fine. Okay, anyway, thank you for coming. Okay. Borde on January 2nd, shortly after the owl arrived, gave me a phone call. She is the environmental scientist and the reserve manager at Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve. And she said that we had the opportunity to bring Denver Holt, a leading research scientist for the Owl Institute. And particularly, he lives in Montana, and he's been studying the snowy owl for many years, and you'll hear more about that in a little while. But we could bring him to Orange County, and she asked me if CNCH Audubon would sponsor this. And after I checked with my board of directors and my conservation team, I was able to give her an enthusiastic yes, so we would do that. So once we said yes, we would do it, then we had to find a place, because we don't have any place at CNCH that's this big, and we were expecting an enormous audience. And right now we have way over 300 people in this audience. And how many on the webinar at this time? 517 people are watching this on a webinar. And the reason that we were able to produce a webinar is because Kenny Perez and Stephen Bell, sorry, I forgot Stephen's last name, were able to do the magic to make this a webinar in addition to just a public speaking event. They left their table. Okay, as you came in, there was a welcome table from CNCH out front. And on that welcome table, there is information about the snowy owl, as there is on this table. There's also information about joining the Audubon Society, and first you join national, and then they kick you back to whatever chapter is closest to where you live. And then there's a big poster with QR codes on it that are going to tell you about the upcoming events at CNCH Audubon in the winter months. And it just so happens that before the snowy owl came, we had already planned the year of the owl, because tomorrow night we're having a Zoom meeting on the conservation of burrowing owls. On February 4th, we're talking about turkey vultures. On February 17th, we have a presentation on the conservation of the spotted owl. And early March, we have a 2-day workshop by Bill Clark on identifying raptors. And on March 11th and 12th, we're doing a hawk banding activity with Pete Bloom at O'Neill Park. And so it goes on, and we're really proud of the work we do and the things we have to offer you. So if you have any interest, stop by on your way out, take a picture of the QR codes and connect with us. We are accepting donations to cover some of the costs of the expenses for tonight. And there's a donation owl out there. It has a little slot in his head. So if you'd like to drop $1 in there, that would be appreciated. Do we have dollars anymore? I don't know. Anybody carry money? Okay, at this time, I would like to get back to the subject of the snowy owl and introduce Scott Thomas. He's been studying and protecting raptors in Orange County for more than 30 years, working with the chapter and other raptor researchers such as Pete Bloom and Jeff Kidd. He serves as the Sea and Sage Raptor Research Committee chairperson, and he's vice chair of our conservation committee. So please welcome Scott Thomas.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to see this many people coming out to see birds. How many people, just a quick show of hands, are either new or kind of new at doing birds? Good amount. So welcome to being kind of a geek. Raptors are real good for that. I've been studying raptors, as she said, in Orange County for about 40 years and doing work with conservation to conserve raptors and also to use them as a tool to conserve open space. So I've had a lot of conversations with folks over the years. I've worked in several blue collar fields before I worked in the biology field. And I can tell people I'm going out this weekend to watch birds, and particularly in that blue collar field, people kind of look at you like, yeah, whatever. But if I say I'm going to go look at raptors, well, it changes their mind. They kill things, you know, and get excited. So we're really happy that this has done this and created this much enthusiasm. It's great for us too, and all the people who are experienced birders. This just really invigorates and reinvigorates your need to get out and look and see birds and protect birds. As I said, we do conservation work from the small end to the big end with raptors. And so while I've got everybody here, I commend everybody and thank everybody. I went a couple of times to see the owl. I had to see it. And also just to kind of check and see how the crowds are doing. And everybody was doing great. People were staying back where they're supposed to be. The crowds were pretty quiet, respecting private property, concerned about the owl, asking questions about migration and all the things you would want to do. So it's really nice. Owls in particular can be a little sensitive to a lot of people. This bird and this species less than others, perhaps. And Denver will talk more about that. I may be off a little there, but a lot of our owls are really fully nocturnal. They want to be hidden during the day. They don't want people seeing them. So, but they're hard to resist if we know where they are to go take a look. So we always try to coach people to keep a good distance. Don't spend a long time. And remember, if an owl's got its eyes open during the day and it's watching you, it's doing something it's not supposed to be doing. That's its sleep time, so it's already disturbed. But keep the good distances, be friendly with it. If you can, keep the dogs at home. That's a big threat to all birds. Even if it's a good dog, they don't know the difference between a good dog on a leash that's sitting and a bad dog that's running, or a coyote that's going to eat them. So four-legged creatures are tough on birds, and particularly with owls and hawks. And then please enjoy the night. And I'm going to bring up one more person to talk to tonight, and that's Melissa Bordy, who, as Gail said, really put this together. It took a village to get it going in 2 weeks, but Melissa's really been the one doing the work and getting this put up here. She works, as Gail said, for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife at Bolsa Chica. Over the past 2 decades, Melissa has grown great appreciation for raptors. She's dedicated numerous hours to educating others about the magnificent birds, and helping with conservation of their habitats. During the winter of 2012, Melissa spent time with Denver Holt, our speaker tonight, as a guest speaker at the Owl Research Institute, and assisted in developing their winter raptor survey program. In addition, in 2014, Melissa completed a capstone project with methods for management and conservation in the protection of the declining short-haired owl, one of our rare visitors, another rare visitor, Orange County. She's currently pursuing her master's degree at Oregon State University. I'm going to come say a few words and then we'll do Denver. Melissa? If we're not.
No problem. Okay, hi everybody. It's so good to be here tonight. So obviously I've been really busy, so I'm going to cheat and read from my speech because I have all of your attention. It's really important that I have so much important things to say. So Good evening, and thank you all for attending tonight's talk on breeding ecology of snowy owls by Denver Holt. It's an honor to be here representing California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I'd like to thank Sea and Sage Audubon Society for co-sponsoring this event. I could not have done it without you. To my awesome intern, Braden Ortiz, raise your hand again. I know Gail did these thank yous, but he really helped me in a lot of ways. Dr. Pete Bloom, who helped identify, we have the owl pellet over there. If you didn't get to see it, make sure you check it out. That is from the snowy owl. We were able to collect it, and he helped determine what it ate, which Denver will talk about in a little bit. And then Jen Brown from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, and then my awesome and large CDFW team all around the state. And then, of course, Kenny and Stephen from the Conservancy, and Roy Roush. I also want to give a shout out to you. Again, you really brought the community together. So thank you for doing that. You really had appreciation for the owl and helped others grow appreciation and respect, making sure she was safe and protecting that Facebook page. But over the last month, I've had the opportunity to observe and monitor the snowy owl closely. And during this time, I have heard so many stories and met so many community members who have been captivated by the snowy owl. This unique and rare encounter has clearly inspired curiosity amongst thousands of community members, near and far. We are up to 570 now, boys, 570. Awesome, and then all of you guys here, so that's pretty incredible. In fact, even worldwide. So many of you have gained appreciation and formed an emotional connection with this majestic bird. I hope these experiences will inspire you to learn more about our natural world, raptors, and how you can help protect them. Why is it important? I know Scott talked a little bit about this, and Denver's probably going to touch on it, but raptors play an important ecological role in maintaining a healthy environment, not only for wildlife, but for you too, and humans. Really important, and I want to highlight that. So what are the threats to raptors? Habitat loss is an obvious one, so helping protect open spaces like Scott mentioned, planting native plants. You can have a full ecosystem in your backyard, and I promise you will enjoy that and also save money. Cats also kill billions of birds every year, so making sure you're responsible pet owner, you can put a big bell on that collar to let that bird know that that cat is looking to eat that bird and hopefully will never eat that bird, even considering an indoor cat as a pet. Window stripes, you can put decals on windows. And then rodenticides is a really big one that impacts the food web, specifically raptors. So if a rodent eats the rodenticides, that rodent or that raptor is going to go after that slow moving sick rodent, ingest it, and unfortunately a lot of the times they don't survive. And then it affects the whole food web from there. So there's other alternative methods for controlling rodents that aren't toxic for the environment. And then, of course, pets. You cannot have raptors or owls as pets. They are protected by the Migratory Bird Act. And last, I know Scott touched on this, viewing wildlife respectfully. It's important to view respectfully and quietly. It's also best to view the animal in the natural environment exhibiting natural behaviors, avoiding altering natural behaviors, so foraging, roosting, or even feeding their young. So I know that was a lot of information. But you guys can find all of that on the California Department of Fish and Wildlife website, the Audubon Society's website, and then Cornell Lab of Ornithology is another really good source. So there's my speech, but I get to do the great honor of introducing Denver to you. Denver holds a really special place in my heart. As you guys heard, when I went to Montana with him, he made me hike 8 miles in a foot of snow. It was hard work. But it's a great pleasure to introduce him. Denver is a wildlife researcher and graduate from the University of Montana. He is the founder and president of the Owl Research Institute, a nonprofit organization located in Charlotte, Montana. As a dedicated field researcher, Holt believes that long-term field studies are primary means to understanding trends in wildlife populations. Denver has been a leader in owl research, education, and conservation for over 30 years. While much of today's research is conducted remotely or builds on existing data, Holt has been unwavering in his commitment to boots on the ground data collection, a classic hardcore field researcher, and has spent a lifetime in the field with owls, observing, recording, measuring, and enjoying the natural world. The resulting body of work and its implications to conservation is an incredible gift and legacy. He is responsible for some of the longest running owl studies. So with all, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Denver. I'd like to introduce you guys to Denver. Help me give them a good, warm welcome.
Okay. Hey, Melissa, do you want this? Oh, yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I always forget what I'm going to say when I get here. So, first thing though is to thank Melissa and for her efforts to coordinate all this in such short notice. To bring me in, and our raptor surveys that she helped develop 10 years ago. We just did one the other day, and our transects we had 670 raptors on the 5 transects over 25 miles. So it's one of the hottest areas for wintering birds of prey in the northwestern U.S. Thanks to her and others. And then Sea and Sage Audubon and all the Audubons. From what I understand, there was quite a few of you came together to help get me here and all that stuff. So I appreciate that. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of take you through the world of the snowy owl that I've experienced now I just finished my 31st year, going for my 32nd year up in what was formerly called Barrow, Alaska, which is now called Utqiagvik, which is a Inupiat Eskimo term, means a place to hunt snowy owls. So we'll talk about that, and then just take you through the breeding season. It's really hard to do a public talk in many ways and a technical talk. So what I've been able to do over the years is a little bit of data and a lot of nice pictures, a little bit of data and a lot of nice pictures, and hopefully that satisfies everybody. And so with that, I'm just going to get started. That's a female snowy owl on a nest. Kind of cool looking bird there. And let's see if I get this going. All right, so as I said, I'm going into my 32nd year coming up this year. Let's see what happens. Okay, so when I did this here, this is just some very quick highlights, 31 years of study, 30 years of studying the lemmings with the owls. Our study area is 100 square miles, so Melissa, that's a lot bigger than the little 8 miles I made you walk. And we've worked on 285 nests, banded 815 snowy owls, recorded almost 44,000 prey from pellets, 3,300 from cache nests. The first owl in the world with satellite transmitter. We've had the first 6, and the only live cameras in the world on nesting snowy owls. And then I always say the snowy owls are the avian icon of the Arctic, as polar bears are for ice. Snowy owls are for the tundra and Arctic conservation. In the end here, I'll talk about the live cams. We have a few clips to show you. So with that, I'll try to be back and forth for both of you guys here. So this is Utqiagvik, or this is Barrow, Alaska right here, as you guys can see. And that's the most northerly town in the United States. It's a Inupiat Eskimo village, a growing Inupiat Eskimo village right on the Arctic Ocean. Okay, this is our study area here. And just, briefly, it's 100 square miles or 214 square kilometers there. It's kind of a big area. I bit off more than I could chew when we started 30 years ago when I was younger. So we'll walk over here, we'll walk over there. And now I send the younger kids to do the really deep walks, and all that. This is what it looks like. So this is Barrow or Utqiagvik. And this is July. So the ice has just come off. Usually, the ice is usually shore fast right up the end of June, early July. Last year, the ice was shore fast, and you couldn't get out up until mid-July. Every morning I'd wake up before I'd head out there. This is June when I start up there, sometimes late May. But this year I was up there in early June. Every morning I'd get up, check the wind chill, check everything. And it was usually 23, 25, 27, 29, might get up to 35 during the day. Wind always blowing, humid, absolutely miserable all the time. But what I want you to see here too is this is where snowy owls, this is Utqiagvik. This is where a place to hunt snowy owls used to be. And as Barrow has grown in modern day, they've actually, you wouldn't think that you could infringe on the tundra and push snowy owls out, but that is occurring and more all the time. Okay, there's a long history of snowy owls in the Inupiat culture. Most of the time, the Inupiat Eskimo up there, they carve and admire subsistence animals. So whether it's walruses or seals or whales, caribou, things like that. And very few animals do they admire that aren't subsistence animals. The snowy owl was hunted. Again, a place to hunt snowy owls was taken, the eggs were taken, the chicks were taken as pets and all that, but it was kind of a summer supplemental food source. Also, pets, the kids had them and had fun with and all that. So they admire the snowy owls for other reasons other than subsistence. And this here is, that's a walrus ivory carving there. And then if you look here, the bill and the eyes are baleen from a bowhead whale. And then the yellow with the goldish eyes there are fossilized walrus ivory. And so they admire these things. They're really, really nice carvings. I've got a couple of them. All right, so anyway, when snowy owls come back to the tundra, this is what they see for the most part. You know, they see a snow-covered tundra with, and remember these mounds, these tall mounds that are out there that melt off a lot faster than the rest of the tundra. And mostly that's just because, you know, it's a tall mound, it's windswept, the sun beats down on it. And so when they come back, this is what they're looking for nest sites. But how do they evaluate the lemmings in a landscape like this? And no one knows the answer to that yet. Okay, so as the tundra melts, you know, when we get there, it's melting off, and it melts fairly fast, 24 hours of light from about May 2nd to, or May 10th to August 2nd or so. It melts very fast. And what we do is we go out there and we scan for snowy owls. We look along the ridges or hills, and boom, there's one right there. You guys on this side, and if you want to see it over here, somewhere over there. Yeah, there it is on that side right there. So what we do is we scan for vertical positioned snowy owls, all right? And we're looking for adult males, which we'll get into later, which tend to be almost pure white. So once we found a vertical position male snowy owl on a ridge or mound, then we go left and right. And over the years, we've kind of casually said 500 meters either side, or 500 yards if you want, either side of that, if there's going to be a nest, then we're going to find a vertical position female snowy owl sitting on a nest. That's what we hope for anyway. Okay, tundra melts off. It makes finding these males a little easier. And as you can see here, they just glow. And you can see them across the tundra with the naked eye for quite a ways. With binoculars, it's a little easier. And so that's what we're looking for. And we might get lucky. We might see some behaviors like this. And females are kind of like, give me my lemming, you know. And this is what happens all the time is males hunt, females take the food, etc. So we might get lucky and see that as an indication that there might be a nest around. And this is ultimately what we're looking for. There's a female on a nest, and this is a nice shot of her sitting there with the lemming in her mouth. She's very happy to have lemmings, trust me on that. And so that's what we're looking for. Now, from her perspective, however, only females incubate, only females brood the chicks, and males provide the food and the protection. We'll go through that. There's a division of labor there that I like, actually. Males have their job, females have their job. A little overlap, raise a family, depart afterwards, and move on. All right? So it's kind of a cool system, but part of her nest defense behavior is to be very, very vigilant on the nest. We wonder if they even sleep, you know? And sometimes they'll close their eyes and they wake up. They close their eyes and they wake up. Sleep might be very different to them than what we perceive it as. And so just looky here, this is kind of neat. So she has a really commanding view of the surrounding tundra. All right, a really nice, she can see everything. And if she's not sleeping much, she's always looking, always alert for predators and researchers. Okay, so this is what it looks like. This is the first sign of nest defense. Sorry, guys, if I always shift right, because I always shift right. So I'll go over here. But so what the female does is she's sitting on the nest here. She's vigilant. She sees, you know, what we call ourselves, you know, the apes walking across the tundra here, and she's out there and she sees these potential threats. If the threat moves sideways, she'll just sit there and watch and monitor and watch and monitor. But when the threat comes straight on, she'll leave the nest. So this is the first sign of nest defense. This is kind of cool here. All right, let's see if I can get it. All right, so that's it. First sign, she gets up, she flushes off the nest. So we're out there, especially when we were young and we were rookies, and we're out there, we're looking, God, I swear there was a nest out there, you know? And we walk out and we see a male, we see a female, we can't find a nest and all that. Well, she's left the nest when she sees us in the distance. This is just one data point, but I just want you to see this here. Very short. So she's leaving the nest at around 450 yards or 400 meters or so. No other owl in the world flushes from its nest at that distance. They always remain concealed, hiding, let the threat pass within a few feet, or if it gets right on top of you, then they flush. These guys are leaving at great distances. But if you think about where they nest on the ground, there's no vegetation to cover them. They know they're white, and they see the threats, and they slip off the nest as the first sign of nest defense. Then, because we are who we are, and we figured this out, we know that, okay, we can see the molted feathers on the nest mound there. Let's go to that nest mound. We march to the nest mound. Then things change a little bit. So from that passive, movement off the nest to watch the potential threat, the female might come in and give you a threat display like this, looking at you. Or the male might fly in, and they usually are in the air, and they'll come above you and they'll bark at you. Oh, oh. Ooh, ooh. So the nest defense is beginning because they're trying to protect their chicks. All right, the female might come in and scream. I can't do a girl scream. Ah, something like that. So, or some long whistle scream type thing. All right, so I can't do that. But anyway, they'll come in and they'll scream at you like this here. Or they may do a distraction display. This is really unusual. Males usually don't do this. This is a male. He's coming in. He's like, oh, I got a broken wing. Follow me, follow me. So I'm an Arctic fox. Like, he's injured. Maybe I can grab him, So he'll lead you astray that way. Or he'll come in, more likely, he'll do a threat display at you, okay? And then the ultimate of what we call nest defense is the attack. And they come in and then they whack you, all right? So now they're done with the passive part of it. You're at the nest, you're a threat to the chicks. We don't see as much of the eggs, but once the eggs hatch, then you see this. And so this is a male. Look at the concentration here. This is a male coming in on us. I'm going to tell you right now, the legs are a lot longer than you think, all right? When we first went out there, I'm like, I'll just duck, and I ducked, and boom, right in the side of the head there. Very, very long legs, all right? And so this is what it looks like. This woman was walking her dogs down a gravel road outside of Barrow. This male came 500 yards across the tundra. She had two big labs, 50, 60-pound labs, and the male came in and hit one of them, and the lab took off and went under her truck. She said the other male, Joe, turned around to take the owl on. The owl came in and hit it, and Joe ran under the truck. They hate canids, all right? So imagine what they do to a little 5-pound Arctic fox, So that's it. And this is what it looks like if you're a researcher, okay? So this is it here. That's me here. There's a nest. There's a chick right there, all right? That's the male. He was tough. And this poor guy, he's a plant ecologist, right? From Panama, Costa Rica. He wanted to come out, come and take me out. So I took him out, and the owl ripped his brand new Patagonia coat, like $300. He was bummed about that, but he's still my friend. Okay. All right, now this is just a frequency histogram. But this is kind of cool too. All right, so there's some issues with this statistically, but for the most part, that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at this. So what it comes down to, males and females, all right? So they both bark. Males hoot, females really do. Females scream, males really do. Both attack, but dominated by males. And this is a little inflated because of one female. And then females display, and males really do. So you see, there's a division of labor in breeding. There's a division of labor in nest defense, and a lot of things. There's a division of labor and a little bit of overlap. They come together to raise a family. So take those things I just said, all right, and we put them together. And what we're looking at, we think, we have some data to indicate, we have more data to it now. We think that the more aggressive males and females who engage in attacks and screams and wing fanning will produce and fledge more young than the less aggressive, because we do have bum males. You go to a nest and they go hang out, and they're like, they don't do anything. And the females screaming and trying to protect, and they just stand over there. So we call them bum males, and we do have them. I will say, we don't really have bum females. Once they lay, they're pretty tight there. So anyway, so we're looking at that, and that's what we think. We have more data to add to it. All right, so anyhow, this is it. Now, just imagine trying to see a snowy owl out here on a nest as the tundra melts. Well, the females dig the hole in the tundra, so they'll dig it with their talons, and then they'll use their bill, and they'll scrape out a hole, and the ground's pretty frozen, but they'll do that, then she'll lay the eggs, and then she'll sit on the eggs. Okay, this is a female coming in. Look at her brood patch. Right? We all know what a brood patch is. So there's hormonal changes during the breeding season, increases in estrogen, prolactin, and other hormones, and it stimulates the feathers to fall out of the belly the lower belly region, the upper chest region, and the feathers fall out. Then there's an increase in blood flow, so you get this highly vascularized, skin patch right here, where she can apply direct heat to the eggs, roughly 100 degrees or so. And that's what she does. That's what she incubates. So she incubates the eggs for, 33 days or so. Only the female incubates, only the female develops a brood patch. And some other bird species, both males and females, they can switch off, and there's all kinds of things that go on. But in the owls, it's only the female. It's a huge, enormous brood patch because she's got to cover up to 10 eggs sometimes. All right, so we do things like measure the eggs, and then we look at hatching and stuff like that. Many bird species hatch on the blunt end of the egg, which is up here. They get an air cell there. We found that snowy owls hatch out of the side of the egg. I don't know what that means or when they start breathing air before hatching. But anyway, they hatch out of that, usually in the order in which they're laid. So they have asynchronous hatching. So, we have synchronous and asynchronous, right? So like ducks, for example, pheasants, whatever. They lay all their eggs. They start incubation when the clutch is done. Snowy owls and other owl species start with the first egg. So you have asynchronous hatching. So they hatch in the order in which they're laid. So if we have 10 eggs, the first chick can be 10, 11, 12 days old, and the youngest chick can be 1 or 2 days old. So you have that. And then, of course, you have asynchronous growth. So we do all the measurements. We do the, just a lot of stuff, the biologist types do. And when they hatch out, they're like a little downy, pure white here. Their eyes are sealed shut. They're totally dependent on the female for protection, for warmth, thermal regulation, because they can't thermoregulate, and for food. And so they grow rather quickly. And you can see here's the egg tooth right here where they break out of the eggshell. They go. And when we do our nest checks every 3 days, we can pick the eggs up if there's no fracture. Listen here. And you hear them just pounding on the inside like that to try to break out of the eggshell. And their eyes are sealed shut for quite a while there. Egg tooth is there. And again, totally dependent on the female and the male. So as I said, they grow rather quickly here. And we can see, here's this great big powerful owl, this female. I mean, and they're just so much bigger than the males. They're so much more powerful than the males. And just to watch them from a blind and see how gentle they are with their chicks. And, we all talk about, or we hear about the Cain and Abel thing where the bigger sib beats up in the little sib. And herons and egrets, the bigger sib might throw the other one out of the nest. And golden eagles, they might, the bigger one might kill the smaller one and throw it out of the nest. The owls are way smarter than that, And so they're really nice to each other in the nest. And the female portions prey rather equally to all of the young. Where it gets a little tricky later on is just when they grow, the bigger chicks can maybe outcompete the others at getting to the food first, but they don't beat up on each other and things like that. So anyway, so we continue to monitor their growth. They've changed now from that little white that I showed you, that what we call the prototile or the first down, into what we call the mesotile or the second down. This is like the camouflage or the thermal down. And if you take your gloves off and you go out there and you pick a chick up like that, it's so warm, you want to have gloves made out of little chick bodies, I mean, it's so nice and warm. But really, really rapid growth because they nest on the ground. So we continue to monitor them, chase them around and all that stuff, doing our research. And it is a degree of harassment, wildlife research, but, we justify it because we have licenses and all that stuff, and we hope we do good in the end. So, all right, so anyway, this is kind of neat too. So they leave the nest, all right, at about 3 weeks of age. And not much is going on, they can barely lift their heads the first week or so, and then they just start growing faster and faster and faster. And then just right here, this is all I want you to see, it's just right here. Usually between the second and the third week, they're just piling on the weight, growing as fast as they can, but mostly it's just all body mass. Their heads are developing and their legs are developing. That's what's going on right about now. So it's not a huge sample, it's only 2 years of data, but it's about 225, but it's pretty good. And it shows, they grow at about the same rate and all that. And then they leave the nest on foot at about 3 weeks of age. All right, so they're not going to fly for another 4 weeks or so. All right, so we'll get to that. All right, and when they're out on the tundra now, they've got to put up with potential Arctic foxes. And as I showed you with that black lab, the Arctic foxes, they're sneaky and they're good hunters and all that stuff, but they get into snowy owl territory and they just get whacked. And you can hear them. I've watched it and heard, the owl hits it, and they chase them off the territory. But sometimes the Arctic foxes are tough too, and there's been some battles that I've seen over in Russia and Wrangell, Iowa, between Arctic foxes and snowy owls. All right, then you got polar bears. You know, they're not like a super threat or anything like that. They're not as far inland, but they do occur along the coast. And we had one instance where we were doing a film with somebody. We do a ton of those. And I don't know who it was. Geographic Discovery, somebody. Anyhow, a sow polar bear came walking down the canal or the channel there, and it was near the owl nest. And so she came, she had 2 cubs with her, and they got it on film. It was actually kind of cool. And the male snowy owl comes in, he lands between the nest and the bears. The female lands on the other side of the bears, and they just, you know, they bark at them and fly around. But the bears, they were just trying to get to the coast, so it wasn't a big deal. But we have seen them attack bull caribou or caribou. The caribou don't know they're walking across the tundra, you know. They just happen to be walking in the right direction, you know, and the owls come in and whack them, you know, and then they whack them. And I've seen the bull caribou, you know, like, what's going on? And, you know, go like this with their, what's going on? But once they redirect them from the path to the nest, then, you know, caribou goes this way, the owls go right back to what they were doing. They're super, super forgiving. All right, but everything hates snowy owls up there because the snowy owls eat their children, you know. And so this is a parasitic jaeger, I think, coming in the snow. Every time a snowy owl moves up there, either a Pomeranian jaeger or a parasitic jaeger comes in and chases. Every single time that the owls move, they get harassed. And this is how they defend themselves. Every once in a while, they'll hook one of those jaegers, but not that often. So anyway, as I told you here, at about 3 weeks of age, they're going to leave the nest. So we try to get them all marked. We know, because we visit the nest every 3 days, we know every individual in that nest. And when it's time to band them, their legs are big enough, you know, we've got it all recorded. Everybody gets their individual band prior to leaving the nest. And going back to what I said there, leaving the nest. Why leave the nest when you're only 3 weeks old and you're not going to fly for another 4 weeks or so? Well, the biggest answer is they nest on the ground. Even though they're big and they're powerful and they're able to defend themselves fairly well, they're still susceptible in certain areas. There might be wolves or wolverines or coyotes, occasional Arctic fox, occasional polar bear, occasional grizzly bear, stuff like that, that might get to the nest. And so again, they leave in the order in which they hatch. And so the first 2 or 3 might leave at 3 weeks, but the other guy's still only two weeks old. But if a predator comes in and finds a nest and eats them all or kills them all, you still have a couple that have already left. All right, so you still have a chance for reproduction this season. So anyway, that's what we think is going on. And what we did, you know, are they stressed out? And so blah, blah, blah. We take them, we take blood, we look at their hormone levels, you know, their stress levels. And so long story here, but to make a long story short, when they leave the nest at 3 weeks of age and we look at their stress levels, their corticosterone levels, so you got, you know, a stressful stimulus might be no food. It might be a big sib beating up on a little sib. Whatever it is, if there's a stressful stimulus and it can show up in the blood. So we bleed them within 3 minutes and we bleed them over time. Then we do the assays and all this stuff. It's what they call the HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal. What we find, and I work with the endocrinologists on this, is that whether you're on the nest or off the nest, your basal level is about the same. Even though it rises over time, and there's a developmental process involved here, the bottom line is when they leave the nest, they're not stressed out. All right, and again, that kind of goes back to the argument that it's probably because they nest on the ground and it's susceptible to predation. The shorter owl leaves its nest at, you know, about 2 weeks, just a little more than 2 weeks of age. And why the difference between the two? Well, the snowy owl is big and powerful and can protect itself. Plus, it's a big bird, so probably has a longer developmental process. The shorter owl, a shorter developmental process, and it's not really that aggressive at the nest. So anyhow, so they're kind of cool when they leave the nest. Everything's fine. I feel good. I can thermal regulate. I got on my thermal down jacket here. I should be able to take care of most of the weather, but I still need food. So we follow them around. You know, if they get sick, we try to figure out what's going on. We do not try to save them, and it kills you because I've been out there 31 years. I like them, and it just kills you to see when one's dying. But it's not my job to save them. My job is to figure out why some live and some die, and so it's really hard to do, except for one owl, which we call Terminator, who turned out to be Terminatorist, is another story. All right, so some die, and we try to figure out why. And so we take them into the labs and stuff like that. What we've learned over the years is you kill, if the parents get shot, then the chicks starve to death, okay? but also too with increasing rain. And when we have 3 or 4 heavy days of rain, we think that the lemming activity is suppressed and it's harder to find food, and the birds will just starve to death. And so when we do the gross necropsies, we look at there's no fat, particularly around the heart. All the fat's been absorbed around the heart, and they become susceptible to pneumonia and hypothermia and things like that. And they up and die. And then we take specific parts and we send them down to the histopath to try to figure out any other things. But some live, all right? And so, there's a lot of mortality up there in the Arctic in these guys here. A lot of just natural mortality, but some live and they're starting to grow and really look pretty cool, wandering the tundra. Who knows where they're going? Do they know where they're going? Not sure we know the answer to that yet. So we continue to look at them, continue to monitor them. And then at about this age here, we started seeing a few things which are kind of cool, which might relate to your bird here, is we started seeing that some of the birds were like a sooty gray and some of them were like a silver gray. Some of them had a few more markings on the wing feathers and some of them didn't. And we're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So, you know, we started recording it. We came up with this system. And so we looked at these here, all the heavy markings, and these here, siblings, okay? All right, brothers and sisters here. And we predicted this is a female, this is a male. And then what we did is we took blood. We sent the blood into the lab. We didn't tell the lab our predictions. All right. And then we looked at these feathers and we found these patterns on the feathers. And if you look here, this is what we call transverse bars. So you have bars that go right across the entire feather. Here's the feather shaft in the middle of the rachis. Then you have irregular bars and they go across, but they're not like continuous. They're broken, but they still come in and touch the rachis or the feather shaft. And then you have what we call spots of these little things that don't touch the feather shaft. So we sent them all in, 140 chicks we sent in. We had our predictions, but we hid our predictions from the geneticists. We didn't want to influence their analysis or anything. And we got all 140 correct as far as sex goes. And the dark one was a female, the light one was a male. And so this is another composite here. Anyway, this is what it looks like. Female wing, male wing. When we look at it, we built these models. If you look at one feather, secondary number 4, if you can tell with, almost 100% accuracy using that, if it's a male or a female. All right. So, and that's kind of relates to your bird here, which we'll talk about in the end. So anyway, they continue to grow. I mean, that's a good looking bird as there is anywhere in the world at this stage here. It's a beautiful, a very handsome bird. So we continue to monitor them. Other things we do is we measure nests. You're like, well, how could there be habitat loss up there in the Arctic tundra? Well, there is habitat loss. And as Barrow grows, and what's been going on is they tend to build the roads and housing projects and stuff on the high end of the drier sites wherever they can. And these are the sites where the snowy owls are. But it's kind of neat. And just very quickly, any of you who've lived in northern cities, you know what happens with the snow and the rain and freezing and thaw, and you get cracks in the road, and then the water goes down in there, then it freezes and it heaves up the sides. This is how the snowy owl mounds that they nest on are evolved. And they're 10,000 years old. There's old trees, and that's what the snowy owls nest on. Then what we do, actually, this is kind of funny here. So my Inupiat friends, they think that we're crazy. They think, they just say, oh, you white guys are always counting things. And just use your head. And they go, why? They say, Denver, why are you measuring the mound that the owl uses and comparing it with other mounds? So we're doing random versus use, right? Because that's how we're trained. And they say, think about it. Everyone knows they nest on the tallest mounds that melt off first in the summertime or in the spring. And so we do all the analysis, we do all the data and all that. And when you say, yeah, they nest on the tallest mounds that melt off in the spring. And it's like doing the pellet analysis and so many other things in the Inupiats think that we're just dumb. And so anyway, I got to make fun of what we do sometimes. All right. So we capture them sometimes. We need a bigger crew up there to capture more of them. This is the first snowy owl in the world with a transmitter on, a satellite transmitter. This female here, we had the first 6 in the world. The data is much better now. The transmitters are much better. There's a lot of people. Project Snowstorm's got some good stuff going. People in Canada and Russia and Scandinavia, they all got some pretty good stuff going. But that's what generated all of this snowy owl satellite tracking was our studies here, and the first ones to put them on in 1990 and stuff, 99, 2000. This just shows you here what it rides like here. Okay, and this was just the first analysis. Now, again, What this did is it stimulated other people to go out and catch snowy owls and put satellite transmitters, because you would say, hey, look, they never left the Arctic. They stayed in the Arctic all winter long. These were all females. They stayed in the Arctic all winter long, and they went from Barrow, Alaska to Russia, down here, back over here, all over here, over the course of a couple of years. What are they doing? What are they eating? And all that. If you read the historical literature, which none of the young kids do, you do find that early explorers saw snowy owls along coasts in the Arctic in the wintertime. Coast Guard cutters that were able to break ice saw them out in Polynias and on the edge of the pack ice. So they've always been known to do this, and now we're learning more and more as we have better technology and all that stuff. So even though we only had a few, it kind of generated this whole new interest in what they're doing in the wintertime. Okay, so this is a male. All right, and this is what it looks like. They're pretty good size, and males do most of the hunting, as I said. All right, so females sit on the nest, females incubate brood, males hunt. All right, is the weaponry they use right here. You know, birds have 2 to 4 toes. Most birds have 4 toes. That's my hand, so a decent sized male hand, and that gives you an idea of the weaponry. You know, imagine if you're a little 1 ounce lemming. Yeah, it's gotta hurt. And so, anyway, they use that. They eat a wide variety of things. This is a male coming in, very typical, flying into the female to deliver food. Okay, in our area, they eat 2 species of weasels. This here for you shorebird people is kind of cool. Of all the birds up there that they eat, which isn't a heck of a lot, they seem to like the red phalarope the most. This is an adult female red phalarope being swallowed down by a 2-week-old snowy owl chick. Okay, they do eat eider ducks, which, you know, kind of aggravates the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because the eiders are threatened species, but that's life. And this was remarkable photo. This is a spectacled eider. For those of you who are bird watchers, this is a huge duck. This is a male spectacled eider. Dan Cox, my buddy, was in the blind. Female got all excited. She perked up, and he was watching her. She went over the hill that he couldn't see, but he could see wings going and like a fight going on. And about 5 or 10 minutes later, she flew back with this. Barely could fly. Happy chick, though. Okay, this happens, all right? So in times of food shortages is when we see most of our nestling mortality. So chicks die, all right? Probably starve to death most of the time. And the female makes decisions. And I don't know how she makes her decisions, of course, but she makes decisions. There's a food source right here and my dead chick. Do I feed it to another chick? Do I eat it myself, or do I leave it? And we see all of those behaviors. In this case here, you know, it was a tough year. And so that chick had starved to death, was laying there dead, and she fed it to another chick. So some people think, oh, God, how could that happen? But I look at it like that's mothering, you know? I mean, she's trying the best she can to raise some young. And if it means, you know, feeding a dead offspring to another one, then that's what it is. And sometimes they'll eat them, and other times they just lay there. So who knows how the decisions are made. Okay, so in our area in Barrow, Alaska, there's 2 species of lemming. The collar lemming, this is the one that turns white. Killimeatark is the Inupiat word for it. It turns white in the wintertime. It's kind of got a magical quality to it as far as Eskimo lore and culture goes. And then the brown lemming, Lemmus, and this is what makes the world go round up there in the Arctic where I work. And it doesn't turn white at all. It stays under the snow most of the winter, we think. All right, so owl eats lemming, cast pellet. Pellet equals data. Data is skulls. And so we count skulls in order to find out the food habits. Another thing the Inupiats look at us and say, are you out of your mind? Everyone knows they eat lemmings, you know? And so what we do is we say, yeah. And this is one of those graphs, right, that everyone hates to look at. And I just put it in here because I have to make fun of us sometimes. I just sit at a professional meeting and you put this graph up. No one can see it. No one can read it. No one can understand it. Why we do it. And I just say, let's just summarize these things. Forget putting these tables and things like that. So anyway, look at this here. This is pretty impressive. So 43,689 prey recorded from pellets, largest sample in the world, undoubtedly. And 95% of it's brown lemmings. Okay, that's looking at pellet analysis. It shows you how tied in they are to lemmings in my area. Then, we do this diversity. Don't worry about this. All it means is they're kind of tied into one species for the most part, okay? And this is what it looks like at a nest, all right? So you go to a nest, every 3 days, and you see a pile of dead lemmings, hopefully. And you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so we started recording that, you know. And this is another one of those. And this is what it looks like in real life. And so when we look at 3,334 prey found cache at the nest, our species diversity goes up quite a bit, you know, so you get things like, you know, passerines and gulls and shorebirds and ducks and all that. But brown lemmings is still 88% of the diet, you know. So it's still all about brown lemmings. And then we do the diversity indices at the nest. So it increases a little bit, but they still primarily eat 1.5 to 2 species. So this is in a good lemming year. There's 55 lemmings piled up at the nest right here. Our high count was 86. All right. And so, I mean, we love it because it's free data. All right. We don't have to do anything for this data, but pick it up, male, female, unknown, weigh it, brown lemming, collared lemming, whatever, and record it. So it's free data for us. And it's really kind of neat stuff. And this is what it looks like. So you can see if the females are pregnant or lactating, all that. Males are scrotal. And most every female's pregnant. Most every male is scrotal. And everybody's breeding, you know. And so there's the free data. Okay, but this is cool. All right. Oh, too bad that bar's in the way. This is good information, you guys. Look at this here. So if we look at the mean of all of these ones, so the sample size is, you know, 2,500. So the mean of these is 71 grams, okay? So this is a sample size for males and females. Just remember that. The grand mean over the years for lemmings cached at the nest is 71 grams, all right? So we also have our sampling. We kill lemmings. You know, I feel bad about it, you know, but we've been doing it for so long. I can't change it. All right, so anyway, we sample them. And we count nests, and then we run transects, and we observe them as well. Okay, now I want you to look at this trapping result. Look at the mean here, 48 grams, okay? So when we look at the mean over 18 breeding seasons, we have 48 grams for the ones that are in our sampling line and 71 grams for the ones that the males are bringing to the nest. Then, let's see, did that move? Yeah. Oh, that's what I want. No, did I screw up here? Snap, trap, snap. Okay, yeah, so when you look at that, and then you look at, we have the 18 breeding seasons and 12 non-breeding seasons, 48 and 53, pretty tight, no difference between them. And the sex ratio is about the same. So anyway, what we conclude, what's going on here is that males are bringing their wives the best food and the biggest food. You know, I mean, so you got to give the males a lot of credit here. You know, whether they're eating them or passing them up, we don't know. But the biggest ones are coming home because you got a lot of mouths to feed. So, and that's what, when I say there's the females, they don't mess around with young males. Only older males is what they want because they're the guys that got the resources. Okay, so how are lemmings doing? This is just a little graph here. You know, we all heard about lemmings. And some people, it's funny, you know, some people don't know what a lemming is, and I understand that. When I worked at Massachusetts Audubon years ago, you know, you take in phone calls, people call in, they say, oh, there's a snowy owl at Plum Island. And why is it there? And the woman was telling me who fielded the call. And the woman who called up said, oh, yeah, I saw the snowy owl, was really neat. And the woman the information officer said, oh, when the lemming populations crash in the north, the snowy owls move south in search of food. And the woman paused on the phone. She said, I didn't know citrus grew that far north. Lemming, you know. So anyway, I thought that was great. So anyhow, so this, you know, it's a pretty good relationship. The nesting owls and the lemmings. The lemmings are high, owls are high, the lemmings are low, but both are kind of decreasing. Snowy at a faster pace than the lemmings. This year we had a pretty good lemming year, but not a good owl year, so it kind of puzzled me. So this line is coming up and flattening out, but this one is still going down. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but I thought you would see it. And these are other trap lines. It's a really pretty good relationship between the number of lemmings and the number of owl nests. All right. So here's the study area again. So what we've done now is we've looked at this 100 square mile study area, and we look. These are, I can't remember, 279 nests or something like that in here, and these are all nests. And so we got a GIS guy and a little mini brain guy and brought them together here. And what they did is they looked at all our nests and they created these models. And what they found was actually kind of cool is that, all right, so the average nest, remember I told you earlier, we used to say 500 meters either side of the nest. So when they looked at that, they say the average nest over 18 seasons is 1,000, 1,000 meters, 1,600 meters to a mile or so. So we were kind of just guessing and we were right on. And then in your high years, 54 nests, they're closer together, 4 nests are further apart. And when we look at it, let me see if I do this right. Okay. And when we look at it annually, the nests are randomly distributed. But now over 18 years, when we look at it, they're statistically clumped. So the owls are returning to specific sites. And you see, here's a clumping, 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 here's a clumping. And you can see all the clumping over time. So if you were to do a short-term study, which unfortunately most wildlife research anymore is, you would conclude one thing. But if you do long-term research, which is rare, then you may come up with many different things. And the things you thought, when you had 2 or 3 years or 4 years of data, don't turn out when you have 10 or 12 or 15 years of data. So this is what it looks like here. These are the nest mounds. This is where we find the owls in this type of habitat. It's also where we have the highest densities of lemmings. All right, so population estimates. Someone said that to me today. The snowy owl is rare. There's only 30,000 left. Well, I want to just say open country species of owls, having a tough time. How we come up with these numbers, I'm not sure yet. And I have some questions on how we come up with these numbers. So they say we have 48% increase in barn owls as of 2019. I checked these the other day. They're still pretty close. And there's not a barn owl researcher I know that thinks that they're increasing. And then you look at the snowy owls, 64% decline. Burrowing owl, 35. Long-eared owl, 91. Short-eared owl, 65. How do we come up with these numbers? No one questions that. So now when we look at snowy owls, in 2004, we thought there was 290,000 snowy owls in the world. And in 2022, we think there's 15,000 pairs. Maybe. How do we come up with that stuff? All right. So one guy does extrapolations from known nesting areas. Another person uses mitochondrial DNA. And so when you look at the people who are the pros at this, they say you can't use mitochondrial DNA to do population estimates because of what you read up here. All right. So that leaves us with, do we really know, or were we just guessing? I think we're just guessing. And so, and until we develop survey methods, we're not really going to, none of the surveys really conducive to owls. So we're not going to know what the snowy owl is or any other owl species. All right, how do snowy owls do in relation to oil and gas exploration? They do fine. I hate to say that, and I know all my environmentalist friends are mad at that. But we look at it. This is a gas pipeline pumping station here. As long as you're not running over with them with ATVs and snowmobiles, they do pretty good because they're protected areas, maybe like where your female is hunting at night if she's going to the reserves. And so they do pretty good with this stuff here. And I think the lemmings do better because of all these structures. More snow is retained and the lemmings live under the snow as long as they possibly can, and they're not as susceptible to predation. All right, this is an issue. Utqiagvik, a place to hunt snowy owls. Well, as time has moved on, the Inupiats quit eating them. And we don't know who killed these owls, whether it was Inupiats, whether it was white people or anyone else up there. But nonetheless, this is what we'd find. So I went on the radio in Barrow, Alaska, right? And I said, it tastes like chicken, you want a chicken, go buy a chicken. All right, there's no need to shoot these things, whoever you are. All right. There wasn't a white biologist in 1,000 miles that stood by me on this. All right. So the Inupiats came to my rescue. They said, Ukpik man. So Ukpik is the Inupiat name for snowy owl. They call me Ukpik man because I've been doing it so much. And they go, Ukpik man's right. He said, we don't eat Ukpik anymore. People come from all over the world to see Ukpik here. It's the only place in the United States that's reliable breeding site. So the Inupiats passed a resolution to say no more killing snowy owls in the Barrow region, the Utqiagvik region. And it's been pretty good. Native Village of Barrow did that. So pretty cool. This one was tough though. So this is supposedly over in Russia. A few years back, they were trapping snowy owls in leg hole traps like this and taking their eyes and send them down to the aphrodisiac market in Asia. Supposedly, that's how the story went. Supposedly there was hundreds of them. Everyone's trying to find out the truth behind it and all that stuff. Clearly they were being killed. We don't know how many and all that, but I haven't heard about it in a long time. But anyhow, that was an issue. This here was probably the worst one for me personally. This was at Barrow, and this was when, as I told you earlier, the Steller's ider is a threatened species. And so when Steller's ider's population supposedly declined, which, there's no really great evidence of that, that Fish and Wildlife decided that, well, let's kill Arctic foxes because foxes eat duck eggs, and then we'll make more eiders. Well, that hasn't panned out, but this is what happens. They put fox traps on all the nesting mounds where the snowy owls were, and they killed this. And until this got on the internet, somehow it did. They wouldn't listen to me, but somehow it got on the internet. And then boom, it was resolved. Okay, and then this is kind of a neat thing. We just published a paper. Why are snowy owls white? All right, well, it makes sense, right? Polar bears, beluga whales, Arctic fox, turning white in the wintertime, ptarmigan turning white in the wintertime, where you spend most of your time, you kind of match your environment where you live. Okay, so that makes sense. But then why do males look like they do and females look like they do? And so anyway, and I'll move along here really fast. And so what we found out over the years is that, and what we think is going on, is that females probably retained their brown bars if they, are a distant relation to great horned eagle owls of Europe. Maybe they've just retained this, and that's all there is to it. But why would a male be this bright white? Why glow like that? And so we're saying, it's kind of interesting. So the first thing that comes to your mind is they nest in the Arctic tundra, 24 hours of light. All right. So with most owl species, it's the hooting and the tooting, the great horn that you hear, or the saw-whet. Screech owl. But with the snowy owl, vision is probably the most important social signaling. 24 hours of light, open tundra. So that's what we think is going on here. If you look at a couple of these, why be that bright white? Remember what I said. There are males, until they get to be bright white, they kind of look like females. Those males never breed and never have territories. So we were wondering, do snowy owls reflect in the UV range? All right, why be that bright white? Maybe they reflect in the UV range like many species of birds, fish, insects, etc. So anyhow, we looked at that and all this. We got some help from some researchers from NASA who know how to do this stuff. And we looked at this one male. We found this beautiful male dead. He had 7 eggs. He just was dead. I don't know why. He wasn't killed that we could tell by anything. Anyhow, so we looked at that, and pretty much what it is they reflect 80% as bright as white snow. You know how beautiful white snow is, fresh snow. And so they reflect about like fresh snow. And there's certain areas of the body that reflect more and brighter than other areas of the body. When snowy owl males court females, they'll catch a lemming and they'll be on a mound or they'll fly to one. They'll have the lemming in their bill and they put their wings kind of out like this. And they, turn around like that, presenting the brightest areas of their plumage to the female. Supposedly that's to get her excited. Oh, my man, I'll mate with him. He's got food, he's got a house, and he's a good dancer. And so anyway, so we look at that, and then we looked at, so we don't think that they reflect in the UV range. And then people who study visual acuity and visual mechanism of owls find out that they don't have the mechanisms to see in the UV range. So that's ruled out. And anyhow, what we think is going on is it's just sexual selection. Over time, because they're in the tundra, 24 hours of light, that the males evolve bright white and the females have this camouflage coloration. She looks at a male, if he's bright white, he's older, he's got resources. And our data supports that. Females only breed with older white males with resources. And that's what it is. Younger males who are spotted don't get to breed. They hang out in bachelor groups. They might be bright white someday, but right now they don't have it. So anyway, and then here you look, the tundra's changing. You get towards the end of August here. It's changing over. Fall's coming. And so the females start to move away from the nest. They start to move away from their chicks. Maybe they're replenishing all their body reserves and stuff. And then what happens is this, your snowy owl. Right? We have this thing called an eruption migration. It's really no definition to it, we all say, 50 snowy owls just showed up at the airport in Boston, and 100 showed up in the Great Lakes region, and 1 showed up in Cypress, California. It must be an eruption. Well, what's an eruption? But nonetheless, it happens. And so we're not going to go into this, but there's no real definition of eruption. It doesn't mean 50 birds, 100 birds, 20 birds. We have words like a mini eruption, a mega eruption, a whole ton of owls came down, stuff like that. So there isn't any meaning. So I always look at the primary meaning in dictionaries and their Latin origins and then what we use today. And a lot of times it doesn't match up. But nonetheless, this is what we see even in Montana, is they land on houses, all right? And they move into neighborhoods adjacent to areas where they hunt. So what are these? Is this a male and a female? Are these two females? Are they both hatchier birds? Is one a hatchier bird and one greater than a hatchier bird? I don't know, but they sure look like both females to me. Okay, and I think that the one on the left, the dark one, yours is probably in between both of those, I think. And so they just show up, they hang out in these houses, and even in Montana, they'll stay for a while. One day there's 20 there, the next day there's 15, next day there's 25, it just varies quite a bit. And this is what it looks like. And so one thing that we forget is that they're programmed to migrate. So after the breeding season, like almost all Arctic birds, the snow comes, it's cold, there's no food, you move south. Snowy owls do the same thing for the most part here. And this is what we tend to see. And this is Montana with groups of these young owls. So your bird, from what I can tell looking at her, and I'm calling her, I think it is a female, it looks like she's probably, right now, she's probably maybe 7 months old. She got here when she was maybe 5 months. November, is that when she showed up? November 12th. So she probably hatched in mid to late June. All right. Did her thing as I've been showing you here. And then at some point, September is what we think, maybe early October, the female leaves. The male continues to drop food off. The male leaves. Now you're on your own. And what we see very often is that groups of these young birds will show up out to sea and they'll land on a ship, or they'll land on a Loran tower, or they'll be on a rock down along the coast somewhere. Whether they're related or not, we don't know, but they seem to move on the same front. Did your bird come in on a boat? I doubt it. Not that they wouldn't do it, but you would have heard by now, somebody on a boat, on a ship would have taken a photo. I mean, these guys, this always happens. A few years ago, like 7 or 8 snowy owls boarded a boat, leaving Newfoundland, Canada, going all the way across. When they got to the coast of France and the owls could see, they all flew to France. And so that does happen, but I don't think it's yours. I think you would have known. She might have just come down the coast. She just might have overshot. The typical area would be, let's just say, from Washington all the way across to, the Great Lakes, New England, southern Canada. That's kind of their typical range. And they may drop down sometimes in a big year a little further into the Midwest. There's records in Texas, records in Florida, records in Bermuda, and all that. Your bird just might have just kept going. Maybe she's still around. I hope she still is. She probably is. But anyway, that's what I would think is going on with your bird here. And so I want to leave you guys with just a couple parting shots here. Why I still go there. Why I'm still an ardent field researcher. And we have 10 major research projects. The long-eared owl project's probably even more data than this one. Short-eared, snowies, pygmy, boreal, saw-whet. We got short-eared, 40 years of data. I got to get it written before I die, though. So anyway, but I want to leave you some shots that I think are kind of cool. And then in the very last shot, it's live. And I'm just going to be quiet for the rest of these. And I just want you to look at it and then appreciate. This is from our camera this year up in Barrow, Alaska, and supported by California Foundation. The only live snowy owl cameras ever in the world. There's only been 4. We've done all 4 with this California Foundation. And I want you to see it. So these are some parting shots here before I take questions. I want to thank everybody for coming and thank CNSage, Bolsa Chica, Conservancy, and all that stuff. And, you can go check out, our website. You can see all the projects. You can see the archives of these live cams. And take the newsletter, support all research. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them. Yes. That's a lot there. Okay, so if you want to ask a question, they want you to go to the mic, but I heard you, and I'll repeat the question. So I think, so what happened to your owl? Number one, there is she still around? Where she might have gone? Maybe she just exhausted the food nearby, and it sounds like she was eating the Boda's pocket gopher, which is a really big pocket gopher. She's been seen with a coot. But maybe she just, and I went to the neighborhood today to see, and I couldn't figure out why she might be there. I don't know the reason why she's there, but where is she now? I suspect she's fine. She's been here since November 12th. So she, yeah. So she's eating, she's eating well. She knows how to hunt. She's probably fine. Maybe she just shifted. When Melissa and I were driving today along the coast, and I saw those bluffs along there, along the marsh, that's where I'd be if I was a snowy owl. Sit in those bluffs, soaking up some sun, catching some wind because I'm probably overheating, and then looking at ducks and coots and shorebirds and anything else to kill. So. Okay, she's 7 months old, and does she know how to get back to the Arctic? Yeah, she's programmed to go back. She may take the same route too. You never know. And can she do it? Well, she got here, and so she's capable of flying all the way back. I'm sure they do that all the time. She's a little further south than normal, but they come down to the States and then they go back. And then some of them come back year after year to the same areas. When there's good data to indicate that some of those birds come back. And matter of fact, maybe you won't see one. You catch one year, 10, 15, 20 years later, you catch that same bird again. And that's the only other time you've ever seen it. So that does occur. I'm sure she's fine. I'd follow the coast. Maybe she came from Russia. Maybe she came across the Bering and just went straight down the coast like that. Maybe she was in Alaska somewhere. We didn't have much nesting going on this year. Was she one of our birds? She wasn't banded, I already looked. So yeah, she's capable of doing it. She's probably going to be fine unless someone shoots her. Yeah. All right, you have to go to the mic, ma'am. Sorry, I was supposed to tell people that. Is it on? Yeah, try it. Correct.
And then that's a lot of information. And then I believe the fact that recognize recognize them little, they recognize them long term and they grow their ability.
Okay, there's a lot there too. I have to repeat the question for the Zoom people. How do they keep track of the chicks if they spread out? Once they leave the nest, whether it's 5 or 10, how do the adults keep track of them? And, well, I can't remember the other part already. And do they recognize them later on? Okay. So, yeah, we wonder that. Is there some direction that they're moving? Sometimes we get a feeling that the adults do move them, and not physically. Maybe they lure them to areas because they kind of end up on ridges towards the end there. And when they get on these ridges, that's where the wind's blowing. and that's where they jump up and down. They practice and they're building the pectoralis and supracorticoreus muscles, and they're doing that. So it seems like adults do lead them in a certain area. How they know where they all are, I don't know. But when we can't find them, because a lot of times, let's say 5 chicks leave the nest, we go out, we find 1. Next time we find 3. Next time we find 1. Next time we find 5. But if you sit down and you sit there all day long and you watch when it's feeding time, you'll see the male flying across the tundra. You don't see anything, and he goes, boom, and the chick sticks its head up. They know where every one of them are. Do they recognize them later after the female leaves? Because the females usually leave first. You're on your own. Males continue to raise the young. Males do a lot. And then the males leave. Do they recognize them years later? I don't know that at all. But they do tend to, feed them right up until they fledge. And so anyway, so that's the answer. Go ahead. Yeah, come to the, sorry you have to do that, but that's the way it is. Yeah. Okay. Was she vulnerable being on the roof? Can I say that's the question versus being in a tree? Well, they've evolved on the tundra, number one. All right. So they're not going to be hiding in a tree like a great horn or a long-eared or something like that. So they prefer to be exposed. Okay. That's how they live. And when they migrate south, they're generally in areas which is very exposed. And they tend to be in the windiest, coldest, nastiest areas in the wintertime. So she's probably fine. She's big enough to ward off probably any threat, maybe an eagle, but, an eagle probably is not going to take on a snowy owl very often. Anyway, they're just both too big. If anything could do it, it might be an eagle. So she's not probably worried about anything, maybe gets harassed by crows or something else, but she may be up there because it was the coolest site around, and I don't know. I was wondering, is there a constant breeze there that's nowhere else or something like that? Because, they'll overheat. You saw her, Melissa called me and she was gula fluttering one day. You got a 70-degree day or something like that. And so she was vibrating the muscles up here, the hyoid apparatus and the hyoid muscles, and she was evaporating water in her upper throat to help herself cool down. It's kind of like panting in dogs, but it's a little, cheats the system a little bit. So, it's probably not a big deal for her to be sitting out there exposed like that. Yeah. Yeah, why not her? Yeah, she's programmed to do that, and hopefully she finds a nice adult male that's got a territory and resources.
Real quick, we realize that thank Jeff, who is the manager of this facility, the Focus Community Center, and he donated this center for us.
Thank you. Walk up there if you feel shy and do that. Just yell it out and I'll answer it. Thank you. Okay. All right. So, what have I observed? How does it bring people together? What is it all about is kind of the question. I suppose I have to say it's great unless you're the person that lives in the house. All right. And we have seen some retaliation over the years. Maybe I said this, but I'm going to say it again. Of all the animals in the world, owls are one of the most widely recognized groups of animals. They occur in all continents except Antarctica, They're in native cultures as far back as we can go. There's etchings in the cave walls in France that date back 15 to 30,000 years of owls. Owls are just so widely recognized everywhere they go, and they're one of the most popular groups of animals in the world. If this was a rare Asian bunting that showed up, birders might come, but the public wouldn't come. And it's just something about not only owls, but the snowy owl, the white owl from the north, the great white owl, whatever it is, and whatever the fascination or the magic is, no other animal gets treated like a snowy owl. As you guys have seen here, thousands and thousands of people. Look at the crowd here tonight and how many people are watching on Zoom. I mean, it's pretty spectacular. And it's, you know, when I'm at these things, there's probably no greater wildlife viewing experience when that happens anywhere in the country. People don't just go see a sparrow or a lizard or even some, you know, cool mammal like a bear. But when the snowy owl shows up, everyone goes, and it's all walks of life. And it's just a neat social kind of gathering. People get to know each other. And it's, you know, it's almost like going to a sporting event. You drop everything as you root for your team, and you can drop whatever it is that might make you different and talk about the snowy owl and how cool it is. You know, it really is pretty fascinating. And when it occurs everywhere in the country, it's the same response. Everyone goes out, you know, even like senior centers, they rent buses and they roll out all the seniors and stuff, you know, and they ask me to come up and talk to them, you know, things like that. So, yeah, so anyway, I hope that answers it. Next.
If you see some snowy owls that are injured with water or with some other conservation agency try to save them, like try to keep them and then
all right, so I'm not so sure about the decline, number one. The question was for you Zoom people, you know, the data indicates that there might be a decline. And then if we were to see injured birds or sick birds, will we do anything to help them? Okay, I'm not so sure about the data. You know, I don't think we know that totally yet. We really need to develop surveys, whether they're stable, increasing, decreasing, all that. But how do you go from 290,000 to 30,000? I don't know. As far as injured birds, sick birds, I think that it's in our hearts. If it was hit by a car, someone shot one, it got tangled in a barbed wire fence, it was sick and starving, to go help it. I mean, that's okay. But to go out, and it was suggested that this one be trapped and bring it in and fly it back to Alaska or something like that. You know, we don't do that. So I think if we cause some of the injuries, or if it's just, you know, you see it starving, you want to help it, I mean, that's okay. We don't do that in our research, but I think that's just in our nature to do something like that. I think that's fine. And then release the birds. You know, we had a female this year, a young female of that nest. We had 6 chicks in the nest. The first 3 oldest were males. The second 3 were females. And female number 5, all of a sudden we get a phone call that there's an owl on the road in Barrow. And, you know, it just didn't add up. And so anyway, the kids beat it with a stick and beat it up pretty good. So we took it in, we flew it to a rehab facility in Montana, and she's rehabbing it. The bird's flying right now. We're going to bring it back to the tundra. And that's because of that circumstance, you know. But if the chick was out in the tundra, we probably would just, you know, leave it alone and then let whatever happen. Yes? Okay. Okay, the question was, again, for Zoom people, if the bird did come down here naturally, how come no one saw it? How'd it get here, and did it come down fast? I don't know about fast or slow. In my opinion is it came down the coast. And it'd be easy to overlook, you know, I mean, if it's just flying, hanging along a beach or cliffs, it'd be easy to overlook. Or maybe people just said, oh, I saw a snowy owl, it's kind of cool. And then because of who you guys are and where you are, it raised a different discussion. But if it just showed up on the coast of Seattle, someone would say, oh, yeah, it's snowy. They might tell me a month later, oh, I had a snowy owl at something marsh on this date here. It was the only one I saw all winter. But the fact that it came from California. So that's what I think. I think it just came down the coast, easy to overlook. And then once you find it, I suspect it's still here. Are they commonly seen in Northern California, Oregon, Washington? I'm not, I don't have records for California, Oregon, Washington. I don't keep those records, but I think it's unusual for California. I know there was a Northern California record some years ago, and other people may know that. Oregon, same thing. There was one that actually spent the summer in Oregon a few years ago. Something like this showed up, spent the summer out in the middle of, somewhereville. And but in the Washington area, not unusual for them to come down along the airport, northern Washington, coastal area, and then British Columbia. Not unusual at all to have snowy owls show up there. How fast they flew, I don't know that, but I think birds just came down the coast. That would be my opinion, and it's just an opinion. Wait a sec. Yes. Okay, for the Zoom people, the question is, can it become, acclimated to people and maybe dependent on people? Birds that are brought in captivity can imprint on people. I think the imprinting stage is usually at a younger age where it imprints, so I doubt this bird would happen. Does it become dependent on the people sitting out there? If it's eating French fries and you're throwing French fries on it, right. But I don't think so, they're very forgiving. You had all these people out there all the time taking pictures. Maybe some people harass it, maybe some not. We harass them during research every 3 days, but they're super forgiving. We go out there, do our work. Female does this, male does that. We walk away 100 yards. She's back on the nest. He's back hunting immediately. I don't think the presence of all you people here bothered the owl a bit. But I wasn't here. Maybe it kept her from sleeping. I don't know. But other than that, I don't think she's flying around saying, is there 1,000 people somewhere that will take a picture of me? I don't think, I just think it's all good. I can go over this side. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so for the Zoom people, is it normal for snowy owls to leave the Arctic? Absolutely, it's normal. Does climate change play a part in that as the second half? Yeah, they migrate. Some stay up there all winter, and we have more data on females. Maybe it's because they're bigger and they can withstand the Arctic cold, and they can hunt ducks and things like that out there. But they migrate, and so they're a migratory species. And whether they leave the breeding area and go east or west, it's still a migration. Does climate change have a role in that? I don't know. If it does have a role, it's probably in the food resources, the lemmings, and that would be the problem. If the climate is affecting lemmings and lemming population fluctuations, some people call it cycles. I don't believe in cycles anymore, but nonetheless, population fluctuations, that could affect snowy owls, among other species. But but they're migratory. And so they move south, and some stay north, but it's still a migration. They move away from the breeding area and they move out. These females now can move way, way out into the Arctic Ocean. There's polynyas, and polynyas are just open areas of the pack ice where there's upwellings, and a lot of seabirds and sea ducks and things like that will spend the winter there in the dark, and the snowy owls are known to go in some of these areas. They're also known to go in between islands and coastlines where the water stays open in the Arctic and hunt, we believe anyway, mostly seabirds and sea ducks. Did that help at all? Okay. When the satellite tracking was done, was there any average distance per day they might fly? There's better data now, and we're not doing that. But when we did that one here, I think she moved 40 miles a day on her 1,800-mile journey throughout over to Russia, back to Alaska, up to Canada, and stuff like that. But they have better data today, and we don't do that. I'd like to do it if it's just a funding issue. Yes. Why did the bird pick the Cypress community? Well, there's some nice houses, safe neighborhood, you know. I saw walls around a lot of the houses. I don't know. I don't know. I was there today with Melissa, and I just racking my brain. Why? Then I would look across, and I would say, maybe we should stand up on a pole and look across. Is there something that the owl sees at this level here that we're not seeing from this level? Is it the wind? Is it, I don't know what it is. Why did it pick it? Why did it stay? Why didn't it fly away when we have crowds of people watching it? One, because it's probably young, and they don't know better. It hasn't been shot at yet. And they're very forgiving. As I said, when we work on them, we disturb them to do research. And they're like the best species in the world to work on because 24 hours of light, they nest on the ground, they're big and powerful. You bother them when you do your research, you walk away. I mean, we time it. We walk 100 yards, 200 yards away from the nest. In less than 1 minute, she's back on the nest. Sometimes I'll walk from here to the wall and I'll lay down and she'll be a little cautious. She'll come in the nest and she'll just stare at me. We'll be laying down looking at each other. They're very, very forgiving. So it doesn't surprise me that she could have cared less about most of you. Yeah. The question is, what about the summer heat if she decided to stay? Yeah, she'll overheat. Their plumage has been tested in the lab, and they can withstand temperatures, to minus 40 below zero before they have to kick in any kind of shivering to create, warmth and things like that. So at 70 degrees, she was ghoul and fluttering. She was hot. I can imagine your summer one. Okay. All right. Yes. Yeah. So why is she hunting at night when the books say they hunt by day? During the summertime in the Arctic, it's 24 hours of light. All right. And when you have mouths to feed and a female screaming at you all the time, then you better hunt. All right. So you're hunting whenever you can. Now, in the wintertime, when you're on your own, you're by myself, gosh, no kids, no this or that. And they're night owls, right? No, Norman Smith has done some work with them in Logan Airport in Boston with night vision scopes. He's found some really neat stuff. Most of the field researchers, the winter field researchers, and will tell you they sit on these snowy owls trying to catch them for hours upon hours upon hours. And then as dusk comes, the owls start to wake up, start preening, and then they'll cough up a pellet and they go hunting. He's got some neat photographs of them like going down to the restaurants, the back alleys of Boston, pulling up there where the delivery trucks bring the food in and waiting for rats to come out and then killing rats, So yeah, they do a lot of hunting at night. In the Arctic, with the 24 hours of light, it's all food dependent and situation dependent. But they do get a little more active when the light is in the horizon. And so the low light levels, maybe it's greater shadows, maybe that's just their time period. But they can be very nocturnal, but it's all circumstance related. Are you hungry, not hungry? Do you have a family? Are you a good hunter or not? Things like that. But as you saw here, it didn't surprise me at all to hear that at 5 o'clock the bird was leaving all the time. Yes. Oh no. Ooh. All right, these guys might help, but I'll give you a little, maybe what I know. You know, when I don't do snowy owls, I guide nature tours, and there's camps that you could send, you know, a 7-year-old to. 12. Okay, sorry. And so, but there's camps that, you know, you could send someone to, you know, maybe foster that interest. And who knows where it goes? Is it birds? Is it mammals? Is it owls? Is it sparrows? I don't know. Is it lizards? And so maybe you could do camps or get involved in some of the, you know, you guys must lead birding tours. You must have, you know, weekends when one of the local guides will take everybody out, and they have, you know, young kids days. And you two might talk better on that. Yeah, for me, it was, I don't know how it just happened. You know, I mean, I had a misspent youth, which is a whole nother story, you know, and hanging out, being bad. And I built a fort in the woods. We used to go do drugs when we were young, and built a fort on Audubon property, got in trouble, you know, this and that. This woman calls me up, who, you know, was a very wealthy woman in the area, calls me up and says, you know that fort? How'd you get my name, lady? You know, I was kind of a wise punk. And anyhow, she said, well, it's going to be taken down. Audubon's going to take it down, but I wanted to call you and tell you that it had to be done, and we appreciate all your hard work. It's a very nice little cabin, blah, blah, blah. If you ever need a summer job, call me. Click. A year later, I needed a summer job. All right. So I drove to this woman's house, right? I bang on the door, and she comes, this little old lady comes to the door and says, can I help you? I said, lady, you called me up last year and told me I couldn't have my fort in the woods, and if I needed a summer job, you would hire me. I said, who are you? And I you know, talked to her. She said, okay, I remember now. She says, you know, I have the girls' book club meeting right now. Could you bring me 2 letters of recommendation? So I came back with a letter from a cop and a letter from a truant officer, as she told the story, and worked on her grounds. And I'm on the grounds. This is a good story, you guys, so live with it. All right. And so I'm working on the grounds, and I see a red-tailed hawk fly over. And she says, what are you looking at? I go, oh, a red-tailed hawk. She says, well, how do you know it's a red-tailed hawk? It's got a red tail, lady. I mean, not that hard. So I worked a little bit. She went inside. She came out with a pair of binoculars, and we found the hawk again or something like that. Worked on the grounds. A week later, I came. The Chief Cherokee was outside, which it never was. And she said, oh, we're going for a ride today. I go, what do you mean? And so I get in the car. There's a pair of binoculars and a Chandler Robbins bird book back then, and a 7x35 pair of Bushnell binoculars. And that was the story. And then I published a paper with her years later. She didn't see the cover of Geographic when we were the cover of Geographic. And so anyway, that's all it took, was someone to show an interest in someone else. Yeah, and then, yeah. And then boom, I was sold, you know. I mean, that was sold. And I had to use sports to get me into college. Once I get into college, I concentrate. So anyway, that's how it works. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll hang out. All right. All right, I'll hang out if anyone else wants to chat. You know, that's all part of the game. And again, go to our website, check out our project, support our research. And I really appreciate everybody coming. I really, really do. And that, I like your snowy owl hat.
And still.
Okay.
I also want to thank you all for tonight. All there, coming to a nature walk. I promise you're going to enjoy it. I'm not going to tell you there are owls. You have nesting owls there. So thank you again for being here, and safe travels today.